Since we have four of us, we'll call to order the meeting of the Airport Commission at 4:03 p.m. We will now invite commissioners attending remotely to please acknowledge themselves.
Helen Reilly.
And Tim George. All right, we move on to the agenda. Do I hear a motion to approve the contents of the agenda as proposed?
So moved.
Is moved by Helen. Is there a second? Second by Robin. Any discussion on the agenda? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? We have an agenda. Item 3 is public forum. Jesse, is there anyone in the waiting room for this meeting?
See, so like Andrew has just joined and Jeff. There is no one from the public. Hello, good to see you.
Did I hear that correctly? There's no one in the waiting room and no one in person?
Correct. Yeah, were you able to hear me?
Yeah, it's a little difficult. The audio is a little difficult to pick up what you're saying, but I think I've got it. So if that's the case, we'll close down public forum.
Oh, that's me. Sorry. How do I get out of this? Let me see if I can.
Helen, are you trying to join on your phone instead of a different device?
Well, yeah.
Which device are you hoping to stay on? Because I'll pick the other one out. I have her.
She's probably out of it. How's that work now?
Okay now?
Yeah, much better.
Sorry.
Excellent. All right, got it figured out. No worries. We'll move on to item 4, which is the consent agenda. Do we hear a motion to accept the contents of the consent agenda as proposed?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? We move on to item 5, which is action items. So we'll start with item 5.1. I would entertain a motion to approve that the reappointment letter contained in our agenda packet be approved by commissioners and sent to the mayor for her consideration. Do you hear a motion to that effect?
So moved.
It's moved by Helen. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Mayor. All right, so I guess I'll start the discussion on this. Just as a bit of background, this letter is something that is requested annually by the mayor's office, and it gives the commissioners the opportunity to weigh in on the performance of the director of aviation over the last 12 months and submit their recommendation as to whether or not the director of aviation should be reappointed for an additional term. I want to thank all the commissioners for contributing to this process. I do my best every year to take all of your thoughts and comments and wishes and compile them all and get them into a nice one-page concise document for consideration. So what you have in front of you today is a compilation of all of that, and I would welcome any comments or questions that any commissioners have at this time. Otherwise, we will call the question to vote on the letter.
I think you did a great job. Thank you very much.
Agreed. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim.
All right, hearing no further discussion, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you for that. And thank you, commissioners, again for your time in this project. And thank you, Nick, for doing a great job as our director of aviation.
Yeah, thank you all very much.
We'll move on to item 5.2, which is the FY27 budget. Nick, is there a certain motion you're looking for on this, or is this really a presentation item?
It really is just a presentation, but it doesn't hurt to have a motion to recommend to the Burlington City Council.
Then commissioners, I would entertain a motion to recommend the review and approval of the budget to the Burlington City Council that has been proposed in our agenda packet. Do we hear a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Second?
Moved by, I think it was Robin and second by Helen.
Yep.
Discussion, Nick and Marie.
Yeah.
Perfect. So I'll kick it off with the first couple of slides, and Marie's gonna dive into some detail as well. It's obviously budget season for the fiscal year 2027 time period, which starts July 1st of this year, July 1st, 2026. What you have here is actually a template presentation. This is a standard presentation that we're going to be presenting along with all of the other departments of the city of Burlington to the Board of Finance, to the Burlington City Council, starting tomorrow. We're actually first on the agenda for tomorrow in the first department to do a presentation. Just want to clarify too that while we are a department of the city of Burlington, we are an enterprise fund, meaning our expenses and revenues are not part of the general fund of the city of Burlington. We have our exclusive budget and process that we have out here. Of course, we have lots of nuances and procedures and regulations that we have to follow, from federal regulations to other standards for airport budgeting purposes. But we're an enterprise fund. What's even more important is when we talk about the revenues, every dollar that is made here at this airport must remain at this airport. So we're not supplementing any of the city of Burlington budget process as we complete our budget down here. It has to remain to support our operation. The first, or I guess the second page, slide 2, we like to just start with a very quick highlight of the organizational chart. This is actually the same organizational chart that you've seen in the past. There are no changes to this particular chart. When I get to the summary though, you'll notice there's a bullet point on the summary that does say future or probable organizational changes for the FY 2027 year. I'm not ready, we're not prepared to share those changes yet, but of course, when we are, then we'll come right back to Commission, Board of Finance, and City Council. You can see kind of the top 5 blue, and we can actually make this bigger in the future. We can make it bigger. And the top 5 blue areas, which are the director level positions, are the leadership team. We have a vacant position, the Deputy Director of Aviation Administration. We of course have Marie Friedman as the Director of Finance, Jeff Bartley online here as our Director of Innovation and Marketing, Larry Lackey, our Director of Planning, Engineering, and Sustainability, and Dave Carmen, our Deputy Director of Aviation Operations, supporting our incredible teams on what we've been referencing as the 4 pillars of the airport, which is our operations team, our airfield maintenance team, our customer experience team, as well as our properties maintenance team, along with our incredible administration team, including Jesse and the many folks that are up here in our offices. So no changes from what you've seen on this, and we'll have future changes in future months. This is the next slide is something that of course you're used to seeing. City Council doesn't have the privilege of getting a monthly report from us on passengers. So this will be part of the same presentation for City Council as well. But you can see, as we presented to you last month, as I'm going to present to you in the director's report later today, we are looking like a very strong calendar year 2026. We cannot yet forecast the 2027 numbers, at least not all the way through June. That's why you don't see them on this particular slide, but of course we're many months away from the end of our calendar year. Thank goodness, because that also past winter. But you can see we're close, exceeding 750,000 passengers, which will be very, very close to the 2008 highest year that we've had at the airport. That of course drives everything in our budget. many times our expenses, but certainly our revenues, whether you're talking about passing facility charges or our concessionaires, our rental car agencies, everything associated with our revenue, certainly out of this particular building. Some quick highlights for you for the fiscal year 2027. One of our goals, as we have pretty much every year, but we have very, very strong goals for this upcoming year, is to, of course, grow our route network, grow our seating capacity with both existing and potentially new airlines, and that will continue to be a very top priority for us. Another very strong priority is, of course, also achieving some of our carbon not just accreditation, but reduction goals. As a reminder, we've already received level 1 status as part of the airport carbon accreditation program through the Airport Council International. And we're working towards our level 2, which is an active, proven record of reducing carbon. And that's our next very tough goal to achieve. We talk about Project Next in every single meeting. This is future tense, completion of Project Tense for fiscal year 2027. While this building is still open, we still have a lot of work to do on Project Next, including removal of the old building, renovation of the second floor. That's all incorporated in the Project Next criteria. So you can see tear down of gates 3 through 6. That'll jump into the fiscal year 2027 timeframe, and then renovation of the second floor all the way to the south side of the terminal building. Big highlight for us, and then of course drives both our capital and future operating expenses. For fiscal year 2027, as we continue to operate out of this building, we want to make sure we're focused on the final step for the South Terminal Expansion Project, STEP. And you can see the word beginning planning, right? It's going to take some effort. We have some presentations that we want to give the commission during the fiscal year 2027 timeframe on what the final step looks like, how it's going to be planned, how financially it's going to be planned over the next few years. That is not going to happen entirely in fiscal year 2027, but you're going to see a common theme over the next few years that the final step, the South Terminal Expansion Project, will be another priority for us into the conversations. Fall of 2026, we shouted as loud as we could that was one of our highest fall seasons that we've ever had. October of 2025 was our highest month out of any other month, and we're looking at that same thing for this fiscal year, which October 2026 is fiscal year 2027 for us. So we're looking to meet, if not exceed, those records. Larry's actually going to dive into some of these during some of his reports, but capital projects were not done. So we still have a lot of work to do, even though we talk a lot about this particular building. The cargo apron is starting next year. The Taxwheel Charlie project that Larry and Dave and their teams are working on is starting next week. The snow removal equipment building, which you'll see future memos from us on how we build our new maintenance of snow removal equipment facility into the fiscal year 27. We're always going to have the RSIP program, the Residential Sound Insulation Program, on our list of priorities. And again, I'm going to kind of, while centralize de-icing pad and at least planning for that, not going to necessarily hit fiscal year 27, but the planning has to happen now so that we can fund it in future years. And then two final things. One, I'll leave it that I started out with growing network and seating capacity. Obviously, growing passenger numbers, we've got to leave it with that as well because it's such a big priority. And I think one of our biggest highlights of this year, as we've been carrying for the last few years, 4+ years, is COVID stimulus funds. Well, this particular fiscal year 2026, we're using the final federal COVID stimulus relief funding that we received, $25-ish million total through 3 different grant processes. Fiscal year 2027 does not have any relief funding in it. So we are now 100% back to being self-sustaining with our revenues without using any of those stimulus funds, which we've used for various reasons.
You're good. The next page, we're gonna talk about our cost savings and our revenue increases that we have coming up in fiscal year 2027. So our budget process that we did, the approved budget for fiscal 26, it was only a 1.2% increase over the prior year. And there were a number of reasons for that. We had some bigger projects that were coming off, some kind of maintenance projects. And we were able to sort of absorb and continue with the expenses we had in terms of things that, there's a lot of operating expenses that we have, whether we're full or we're not full. There's a lot of things that happen here that you have, and there's sort of fixed costs. And coming into this year, we have a 4.7% increase over the budget. I just kind of like to talk higher level and to sort of point these things out where we're going. We do have some larger, this is driven by increases to staffing, it's driven by increases to other contracts. So to give you an example, our cleaning contracts with the opening of this building are going up, and we're also going out for an RFP on the cleaning. So I have put what I think is a reasonable placeholder. We don't know the exact cost of what it will be next year, but I'm trying to budget reasonable in all of our contracts. We also this year added another good example is we added a common use gate system that we've been starting to roll out. So there were some costs we incurred this year, but next year will be a full year of it. So we're doing some things to bring improvements to our operational safety and other things. But these things, they have costs. So we had a little bit more pressure this year on the increase to our costs. Our revenues, in our garage revenues, we did increase the prices back in July. We were at $12 a day. We went to $14 a day. And we have seen a very positive result of that. We didn't know whether, how sensitive people were going to, our customers were going to react to that. We thought we might see a little bit less volume, but we're really not seeing less volume. So we're seeing very healthy, good revenues from there. And that is really helpful, both in terms of this current fiscal year covering our costs, which, like everything else in the world, I think all businesses are seeing an increase in costs. It also helps us to balance for next year. So we have not seen any decrease in our garage customer parking. We'll say our patterns of customers. We did fill up last week as well for a bit because it was April vacation. Spring break. Spring break. We're also with these increase in passengers. Every time you have more passengers, it brings about more revenues, whether they're direct or indirect. They might be, if they're flying here to visit, then they might be renting a car. When they come in and fly out of the airport, they might be buying concessions, or if they're local, they might be parking in the garage, or they might be taking taxis. So we're seeing where our concession revenues, our projections are very strong this year. We're actually seeing actual data as being quite healthy, an increase in those revenue projections, in those actual revenues we're getting from our concessions. That's like Skinny Pancake and Kestrel and Hudson News. So those are our concession revenues. So we're up 19% year over year. And that's really looking at what we are seeing this year. Our transportation network companies, our TNCs, those are the pickup and drop offs. Those are Uber and Lyft coming. So last year, we started the conversation about increasing those rates. That has gone through the process, and we're going from $2 for every drop off or pickup to $3. And we're seeing people, there's a lot of people who really appreciate that as an option to get to or from the airport. And so we're seeing great trends in that as well. And that's, as we go through the next slide, we'll talk about that a little bit more. And our POC revenues, because we have more customers, are likewise, we're seeing an increase in that. And we're very happy and healthy that those are going. Our next slide, page 6, we now have, these are just want to talk a little bit about some of the opportunities that we have here at the airport. And so with our new concourse, and we have new jet bridges, they're not all open today, but they will be all opening shortly, especially once we tear down the old concourse. So we add a lot of, we bring a lot of economic value, not only to the airport, but to the region, especially as we offer those great opportunities for people to fly in and out of here. We're always working on new leases. We have a new hangar that is getting developed on the the Valley West apron. We're gonna be, once that gets open, we're gonna be getting ground rent from that. We have space that is posted and available, and we are always looking to have a balance and bring in, make opportunities for people to become tenants and for building neighbors here for you. So our garage revenues, they continue to improve, and we'll continue to look at that and monitor that and think about opportunities for us to add additional parking down the road. And Nick, do you want to talk about the state legislative tax? Points of things?
Yeah, so it's both an opportunity and concern, and apologies, the last two bullet points are actually the same under the opportunity section. But there's a couple things happening. As a reminder, right now, the state of Vermont only, the state of Vermont only returns $500,000 a year back to this airport out of the the aviation fuel tax revenues. The federal law regarding fuel taxes on aviation fuel is that it has to return back to an aviation roads or anything like that. We contribute about $3 million a year to that fuel tax revenue for the state of Vermont. And again, about $500,000 is returned to us to support some of our aviation programs. So this fiscal year, 2027, as we did over the last 2 years, we're slowly engaging more aggressively, I would say, to say that number needs to increase, which hasn't changed in many years, and it is capped at $500,000 and not associated with any increase or anything like that.
Can you explain that a little bit more? I'm trying to keep track of my questions so that when you guys say, do you have any questions, I can remember them all, but I'm not going to. So that piece is like, it's kind of a big deal, right? Like that's $3 million that we're collecting at the airport as a fuel surcharge, right? And we're only getting back 500,000, and yet it's a federal law that they have to use that money for the airport. So where does the rest of it go?
So the federal law is that it has to be used for an aviation program. The state of Vermont has an aviation program. So they're supplementing the state airport systems with fuel tax revenue from this airport. So it's
2.5 million is going to support the rest of the airports.
That's correct.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's a tough conversation. We support general aviation, we support state general aviation as well. So we're not asking to diminish the
Right, no, I get it.
for that.
But yeah,
But this fiscal year, again, we're going to more aggressively request that $500,000 value increase back to the airport. What's more, so that's an opportunity for us. What's more is that funding is specifically tied to the local share of our FAA grants. We don't want that. We don't want the state to have control over where that $500,000 is spent. If we want it for our operating revenue, we should be able to use it to support that. If we want to support our 10% share of those federal grants, we should be able to use that. Right now, it's specifically mandated to be tied to the grants, which we're also trying to change.
but it's mandated by the state of Vermont, not Fed.
That's correct.
Right, so, and
the
they.
feds,
they
the
did
feds
that.
only mandate that and use for.
For aviation.
Or capital.
And it's because our state airports, and we're only like, what? One of 3 or 4 states in the entire United States that have state airports, because everything else is municipalities.
No, lots of states have state.
Not all of them.
No, not
All of ours are state owned,
except
this one.
and private.
Right, so we have 10.
Yeah.
That are taking the share of the 2.5 million. Right? And probably don't get any funding anywhere else, and they wouldn't need that if we had a more general or I don't want to say normal, but as other places have at least some that are supported by municipalities.
Yeah, possible, yeah, yeah.
That's kind of big deal.
So that's a huge opportunity for us. Jeff actually was at the State House quite a bit last week, and he was able to successfully speak to legislators to not increase the taxes associated with aviation fuel. Right now, it's at a 6% rate. There was a proposal to increase that fuel tax rate up to 2 more percent. That is no longer part of the equation, as part of the conversation down at the State House. And that's also a good thing, because if that tax percentage increase, then we really need to ask for additional funding, because the original proposal was not to use it in this area of other state airports. That's out of the equation right now. That there is no longer going to be a fuel tax increase for this upcoming year. But yet again, our opportunity for the fiscal year 2027 is to request more of those tax revenues back to us. We're also working with the city of South Burlington. We have a fantastic relationship with Jesse Baker and her team, but there has to be a conversation on the local option tax, which also hits aviation fuel at 1% in the city of South Burlington. Yet again, the federal requirement is to use that for an aviation purpose. Or program. South Burlington, of course, does not have an aviation program, so those monies have to be returned back to this airport. And there's a substantial amount of funding in there. Again, there's an opportunity there to increase our revenues to support our capital and operating expenses. Two concerns that we really have, again, that relate to jet fuel, not just prices, but also taxes associated with that. In the global setting, of course, we're actively monitoring what happens with oil prices and wars and all sorts of crazy things. We are also monitoring how that impacts us locally, especially when jet fuel prices themselves have exponentially increased for our all partners, not just our airlines, but everybody is. And also not just jet fuel either, all aviation fuel. The good news is we looked at a 30-year study of what exactly that's done to us in the past. And as oil prices have fluctuated, it hasn't impacted our passenger numbers. It of course has impacted our airline ticket prices. But in most cases, those passenger numbers still increased, even though airline ticket prices have also increased. We're not seeing a substantial change right now, but we want to start at pretty significantly.
Does it change the amount of customers that would refuel here at like Heritage? If that were
Question. Yeah, I don't know. We can track that down a little bit more in detail, because we don't track all of those transactions ourselves.
Yeah.
But we can work with the partners on that. Yeah. And again, a concern is if the fuel tax revenue does not get increased back to this airport and still stays static at $500,000. That's a big concern for us going into fiscal year 2027. So both an opportunity and a pretty big challenge if that doesn't change for us this year.
Go ahead, Helen. Helen, do you have a comment?
You're muted.
We can stop again too, Tim, if
Okay.
Helen.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I was curious, Nick, if you have any, are there any advantages to the Burlington Airport to have some of those taxes support state airports? I mean, I don't know how y'all work together, but so I don't know if it's really considered a system in the state, or it's just there's municipal or small airports all over the state that get some of this revenue.
Yeah, we have a great relationship with Secretary Flynn and his entire team. I also sit on the Vermont Aviation Advisory Council, which speaks to all of the state airports, and we have our own ones in there as well. There are benefits to successful state airports. There has to be benefits to successful state airports, because as you travel into the state of Vermont in a general aviation aircraft from anywhere, right? You not only might go to one of the state airports, but you might also come here. There's a lot of what's the word? Symbiosis, is that the right word? Collaboration between both the state and ours. I think the ratio of those taxes, though, are not quite where it needs to be ordered. Where the majority of people are using airports, both operationally, general aviation, corporate, to 1.5 million people using this facility
Mhm.
alone. And so I think that there needs to be really some serious conversation. And of course, all of that is tied to a successful airport here, right here at Lakewood TV, means a massively successful economic impact to our entire state. So I think that's an important concept. Again,
Are there any specific services? I'm thinking, I read about other airports taking over the air traffic controlling for other airports when they're down or something. Do we ever do that? Is that a service that is supportive of the rest of aviation in the state?
To answer that question, no, we're the only air traffic control facility in the state of Vermont. I would have to think really hard on the overall question. I don't think there's any direct
So,
relation there.
Hannah,
Yeah.
so Helen, one of the ways that Burlington supports the rest of the Vermont state airports is, let's say that my students are out flying with their flight instructors and they're gonna head up to Franklin County, which is a state airport. The ATC, air traffic control here, will give them flight services, radar, they'll tell them where the traffic is and stuff, all the way to Franklin County. But there is no tower or radar services at any of the 10 state airports. So they're all considered uncontrolled. But yet, the controllers here do support everybody going to those other ones, because they might be calling for traffic or telling them, if something's going on up there. There was rockets being fired off in St. Albans Bay on Sunday that go up to 10,000 feet. So that was a good thing for us to know. And the tower was on it telling us. So they provide those services to the general aviation community, because their blanket covers Vermont and the state airports, but it's the plant.
Okay, well, I'm just thinking that's might be a good angle as you speak with legislators about regarding this money, that there is real benefit to all the other airports, and we provide that kind of overarching support, I think, it sounds like, for the whole state. So it just
I just want to be careful though, because it's not like we fund the air traffic control facility. That's a federal funding source. So the tax revenue that we're talking about doesn't have a direct impact on air traffic control, both the facilities, the capital uses, or the operation that's Robin described.
Although customs, right? No, federal again, right? A fuel the heritage. So general aviation comes in to get fuel and to drop off passengers.
Right.
Right? Yeah.
okay. All right, thank you.
Excuse me, Nick, I had a quick question. I mean, given, I know I heard what you said about fuel prices not having a overly drastic impact historically on passengers, but given how linked this budget is to passenger growth and the revenues that come from it that flow downstream in terms of parking and concessions, et cetera, what is the airport do in terms of reforecasting potentially in the face of impacts on demand? Do you typically adjust the budget mid-year based on what you're seeing?
Yeah, there's always adjustments throughout the year, not necessarily directly related to your question, but always adjustments and budget amendments that we move forward with. I mean, you're hitting it right on the nail right on the head. Our revenue is seriously tied to our passenger and the type of operation we support out of this particular terminal building. And that's one of the biggest reasons that the Fed stepped in so strongly with airports, because whether we have a 40, 50, or 90% cut in our passengers, as we did in COVID, our expenses generally still stay the same. Right. So it's extremely challenging, and that's why airports receive so much funding to make sure that they were supported, because they, of course, saw the residual revenue. So there are major risks associated with the fluctuation of passengers. And in fact, we talk about that all the time when we have our credit rating conversations with Moody's and Fitch and of course internally. So tying, yes, we have to, and that's why both passenger growth, seat capacity growth, and of course, working with our airline partners significantly to make sure that not just the demand, but the sustainable demand into the future of passenger growth is something that they're also forecasting for us as well. The answer to that question is, thankfully, there is major and massive demand in the Burlington area for additional air service. And what's really wonderful about that is that's mostly related to domestic US travel. Once the Canadian travel market comes back online for us as well, mostly associated with the exchange rate, not Canadians using this airport, that also is going to help us increase it. But you're spot on. Passengers have and the fluctuation of passengers is a big risk for us, and it always will be, of course. So projecting as far as we can is really important. Well, I hope that answered you.
Yeah, and I'll add a little bit more element, because as we're building, this is something we have dealt with. I've been here 11 years, and 11 years that there's always going to be fluctuations and changes based on external factors. That is the nature of what we do here. And so we very much take that into account when we're building our budgets. We also monitor this like every single month. I mean, we have our finger, our pulse on what's going on and what we're predicting, so that if we ever saw there are big shifts or big changes, we're able to respond to it as quickly as we can. I will say, when it comes to building the revenues, I take a optimistic but conservative approach. So I look at that, not to say what is the gung-ho approach here, but very much look at trends, very much look at how this year is shaping up, and very much look at how our employments are looking and forecasting, and try to come up with realistic, because I hope that we're going to come in at least that, and I would love to be better. So we've been pretty spot on. It's been a pretty good methodology, but that variation that exists, that's no different today than it was a year ago, versus a year ago. So different reasons, but that variation is always can exist.
And Marie and the team really do look at as many opportunities, not just to cut expenses, but also to add to our revenue streams. I think one of our very large advantages, especially as we talk to airlines, right? Because that's really where the conversation is. Well, if we can drive, if we can support the demand and drive the increased growth of seats and airline partners and routes, that's obviously what we're talking about here, with potentially more passengers, because of course that's going to support the demand for filling those seats when airlines add more services. But our expenses to the airlines are extremely competitive. In fact, we're one of the lowest in New England on what we what our per passenger expenditure is for an airline. And a big part of that is the Vermont Air National Guard supporting the firefighting services here, because that's a $4 to $5 million annual savings for this airport. And out of a $20-ish million budget, that's a huge increase that we have to support our own fire department. And that doesn't even include the capital expenses to purchase and maintain the building and the equipment that is necessary. So we have a big advantage there, especially compared to other New England area airports, small, medium airports. But yeah, and a lot was said in for that question, Andrew, but hopefully it helps.
Yeah, thank you both.
Move on. Okay, so slide 8, I should say page 8. This is showing you, these are non-operating revenues and non-operating expenses. And we have so many components to our budget. We have operating revenues, operating expenses, and then we have these non-operating revenues and expenses. And I want to point out, some of these are very restricted as far as the revenues go. And so I want to point out that they don't necessarily help to support our operating expenses. And then on our operating expenses, we have to earn enough money. We have to have enough cash flow. We have to have enough revenues so we can make our debt payments and so that we can make our capital leases. So on this page, the first section in green is all about the revenues that we have coming in. You'll notice there, as Nick pointed out earlier, all of our stimulus money, we have expended all of that fully as of this year. So we no longer, for our proposed budget, we have 0 there, 100% change. Our PUC revenues, we're expecting that to go up. We're seeing it go up this year, and we expect that to continue to go up with our our algorithms that we're using based on the airline information they're providing. We're seeing positive trends. So it's fiscally conservative. I will notice, so the reason we have use of fund balance on here, which is the bottom of that green, when we take into account all of our revenues in the entirety and all of our expenses in the entirety, they don't match. And we have some of that is because we have maybe debt payments, or we have some new leases. We have over $2 million that we're anticipating and hoping to bring together to finance our building of our SRE building, which we're working behind the scenes to bring that, finalize that and bring a package forward to this commission. I have put placeholders in here, assuming that we're able to get that and do that and start that. So we have that, but that's the source of payment on all of the brand new equipment that we got. We got 4 pieces of snow equipment out there at the airfield in the last 12 months, we'll say. And the financing of this proposed snow removal equipment building that we're looking to build, all of that is funded by PSCs. So we also have PFCs are currently, the leases on the equipment was part of a PFC package we already had put together and had approved a year ago. So we're working on a new PFC application. Another thing we have a line under the blue section called interfund transfers. So what that is, it was very high this year, but in 26, 27, we are expecting that to be a lot lower. That's made up of a couple of things. We put our local share, our 10% on all of our federal grants are 90%. So we put that as our 10% share. And also, if we had parts of the project specifically this year, this entire floor was ineligible under the grant funding sources because it is not public space. This feels like public space because we'll hold meetings and things, but it's not space. So there were expenses that were associated, and then we had some components of the overall project that we had to exclude a certain piece of it. Might be like an elevator or an HVAC system. Like there were pieces that they said, well, some of that's going for the 3rd floor. You can't put it all in here. So all of that together, but a lot of the things that we have for this upcoming year, for that $3 million, a lot of that is already approved to be coming out against our PFCs. So we have money in the PFCs already saved that is going against our debt, that is already going against our equipment and things like that. So, and then our capital, which I'm showing on here under the blue section, these are like specific capital expenditures. This would be on equipment. This would be on other projects that we are capitalizing. So excluding the next building, we did that kind of differently. I'm gonna move on to the slide on page 11. Or 10, sorry, so 10 is, we have a whole page for our revenues, and that's why it's all green, and our next page is all for expenses. So we're expecting our total operational revenues to go up 4.7%. I want to give a little bit more context. A lot of these are probably pretty easy to understand what the revenues are for. Airline generated revenues, that will be our terminal rent, and then covering the common use and the landing fees. The general airport revenues, that is a whole bunch of other things that are related to revenues we're getting from the terminal. So that's gonna include taxis, so we're seeing an increase in there. Well, we're seeing an increase in what we're expecting in taxi revenue. We also have like permits that we sell for every employee to be able to park on our service lot. They pay, so we have a hang tag. We also have concessions. Well, and that's a different thing. But yeah, we have a whole bunch of revenues that we have in there, that are just sort of raised by and large from here. So we have everything, we have some utility reimbursements from some of our vendors that they come through here. We have advertising revenues. So we have a number of things that kind of related to the terminal, right in front of the terminal, that lock into there, and it's the total of $1.8 million. Yes.
Question for you there. On garage parking, the two numbers are the same, but you show a $523,000 change.
Well, that is an error.
I love the 500,000. I don't know where you got that.
Yeah, so I'm looking at her, on the real number here. It should be, so under 27, 8,658,500.
That would make more sense.
Yeah, so we should correct that on the slide.
And my other question is, can you tell me a little bit more? So we have ground and building rent and having a very small change, yet we have the big new Burlington Technical Center rent and the new Beta hangar, which may or may not be collecting. I don't know how that works. But we don't have a lot of difference. Is that because we're not proposing yet?
Easily. So when it came to Beta, put over $10 million in infrastructure improvements, because we were talking about a quarry, we're talking about something that didn't have all of that infrastructure in place, roads, utilities, other things that were there. And that was expensive to do. So what we did is we didn't want to come up with 10 million to make that ready for that, right? That's not, and you can see the total cost of our budget. We don't have 10 million.
We would have to finance it. So
Yeah, no, I get it.
So what we did is we're giving, the lease gives them a credit against an offset. So we get a small amount. The building, the hangar is, they built that, they own the hangar right now, it'll come back to us in 50 years. But that hangar as it is, so we get ground terminal rent. So there is an allocation, and we have.
Right. You're talking about the big one. I'm talking about the little one.
And
The little one is the same.
The small ones that they're building, we have ground rent on. So ground rent
That's
is
what I
not as high, right? It's a much lower rate than you're gonna get on a hangar. We also don't have any of the expense cost or investment cost with it.
Because they're managing maintenance.
BTC is similar. as
And
well.
BTC is different, but it's education.
Yeah, there is a bit of a, a recognizing the credit that they put in terms of all the improvements about.
Even though theirs was a grant.
Correct.
Okay.
Because the infrastructure that they put in.
They did.
Will support whether they're there. or not.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that delays some of these revenues coming to us. It is setting us up very well for the future. And it's increasing the value of these properties and that we have here tremendously. So, we just have to wait a little bit longer for some of that, but it's a way to get it done without us having the financing and putting that at risk on our backs.
Gotcha.
So great question. You can see I will point out the QTA revenues is really a 1-for-1. The QTA covers all of their costs. That's specific for their fuel. What we anticipate their fuel costs to be next year. They're doing really well. They have a lot of traffic, and it's amazing how many people don't refuel their cars before they come. I will say that. You're expect about $725,000 in literal fuel. They pay 100%. We get the fuel, we monitor, we put it in there, and then they pay for it. Our concessions related revenues, those are going up, again, that 19%. So concessions all looped in together, where this would be including carriage, this is including all the concessions we have here in the airport. No, these are healthy, real numbers that we have been seeing and anticipating going in the future.
And that includes like the new Kestrel and all that.
It includes New Castro.
New Kestrel, so good.
You know, we're happy to see
Like
those
it.
revenues. We're really happy to see people being very happy to go grab something really quickly or grab that quick cup. It's just another avenue for them to get, because I know how much I enjoy my coffee in the morning. So it's really nice to see when I flew out here last week, and it was really nice to see people in Castro.
Oh, yeah, 6 a.m. People are grabbing the breakfast burrito.
Yes. So.
It's
all
really
those
good.
things are good. And the last thing we have on that revenue thing, which is a change, is we have a state operating grant. We had 217,000. It's just that was really a bonus grant that at the time now hired Madison Reagan, that she got that grant for us, and it is paying for stormwater improvements that we would have done regardless. And so we were able to, this was over a 2-year period, and we're still doing some stormwater improvements that are starting, I think, next week.
Yeah, we have that finished by the end of June.
Yeah, so we're working, we already did some of the stormwater improvements associated with this building out here got covered last year by this MS4 grant. So, but the grant was only for so long, so we haven't like Jared. If we turn to the next page, those are our expenditures on page 11. Yeah, so just trying to show and break up, here's what we have. We're expecting, nearly $400,000 in salaries and benefits. We did add a couple of positions in fiscal year 26. So that is factored into there, and the percent changes that we have with the contracts and things like that are out of our control, as well as the benefits those get negotiated for and who is built on by the city. So they pass those savings on, but benefits are still a lot of money as they are with all packages. And then just go through the biggest accounts that we have here, all of the accounts that we have, and I've tried to group them together. You've got a little bit more in your monthly reports typically that you get to see them, but this is just sort of rolling them all in and putting them all together. Let's see if there's any big ones, so they should probably, unless you have any specific questions.
The professional and consultant, does that include all of, like, that's a really big number. Is that coming from all of our new stuff?
So with that, we're having some, I call them unfunded mandates, from TSA. So there's going to be some of the screening. Right now, what we do is we hire Renowned Concert Services. They come in and they do random, I think 4 days a week, correct me if I'm wrong, Dave, but they come in and they come in for like a 4-hour slot, and they randomly go to doors that are typically, like most of us could batch in and out of. Right through, but they stand there, and when you come in, they are screening employees or anybody else that is going through those doors. And so it is random that they do this, and we're required to do that. Coming to the new year, we're always working with our partners and trying to see if we could delay it, but we're going to be required to start screening concessions. So these are all the things that our concession companies like Skinny and Kestrel and Hudson News are bringing in products. They currently right now are working, and I'm not sure exactly how they go through, but yeah, but in any way, that is shifting to us. And so I have a placeholder in here, assuming that we're going to have if we are hiring
A new
somebody
process
to do
for that.
we are going to be having to pay for that.
I should.
So they're just in there. I mean, unless you have any specific questions, either.
Oh, 1.9 million is not just exclusive to those two things. It's a lot of.
It's a lot of, we flies a lot of.
Like contractors and consultants, all some of that. And they hire me to do a central.
Yeah, legal, any of the consultants, we use a fair number of consultants to help us get our work done here in the airport that have industry expertise that we are required and that we need. Our marketing, we put that under the professionals, so that's staying pretty level. But it's still a healthy number,
But it does not cover like this stuff. That's like contract building stuff is on its own thing, right?
This is cap. This is
Yeah.
revenue.
Gotcha.
Mhm. Yeah, the operating expenses that we anticipate out of all this are factored into this budget, you know, in terms of what I expect. So this is what we're proposing. So we're looking at change over change for our operating budget, a 4% increase. And then, so you'll notice that the operating revenues are higher than that, but those operating revenues, remember, I also have to factor in paying for our other capital or paying for other things that we have going on. They may be lease payments, even if they're coming out of PFCs and debt service. We gotta make sure we cover all. So that's what we're doing. We're building out next year's budget. On page 12, we have just kind of a summary. So I don't know if you want to cover that, Nick, the summary. You want me to keep going?
No, I think we covered it all. I mean, passengers. That's their primary goal. You know, the interspersed with everything is sustainability and carbon reduction. We're already projecting more passengers, a 4.7%. Honestly, 4.7% increase on an expense budget is phenomenal this year. With every single thing going up for us. So it took a huge effort on Ray's part, working with the entire team to really figure out what do we need, what do we want, how do we cut, how do we expand, what are the natural increases to stay under 5% is absolutely amazing. My last bullet point there, I mentioned quickly the organizational chart, but there probably will be a small organizational chart shift in fiscal year 2027. Again, I'm not ready to present today, but I just wanted to put that on there because that is incorporated in some capacity into the numbers that you saw for our expenses. And when I have the full package ready to go, we'll see how.
One last question is are airport budgets typically public knowledge? Okay, and so do we know how we stack up against airports that are similar? Now, I realize we have our own fire rescue taken care of, but do we kind of know how we stack up?
I mean, we're pretty close one of the
I mean,
things.
it looks really low to me, just to give you an idea. I think it's phenomenal that we can operate an airport the size of $24 million budget. So I think it's fantastic, but I'm super curious, like Portland, Maine, or New Hampshire.
So
Yeah, some of these similar ones.
Costs for employment, that is kind of how we compare.
Yeah,
with
not
each other.
really overall.
And literally every time we visit another airport, or if I talk to Paula, Portland, Maine, or somebody else, the first question we typically always ask is, hey, what's your cost per employment this year? And we exchange that, and ours is in between 7 to 10, somewhere in the like $7 to $10 per passenger. A lot of theirs are 12, 14,
Wow.
16, which is indicator. Obviously, that's the ratio that we really want. So we're slightly lower than other airports. But again, it also goes back to
That's a cost, we want to be.
we want to be lower, but to your question, yeah, our expenses are lower compared to other airports. Big factor is big tank. But it's so complicated, right? You can't compare just the airport, it's the metro area, it's the state, it's the demand in that area, you know, passengers.
How much fuel surcharge they get.
That's right, what are the taxes? What is the state?
That would be the question, actually, right? Do you guys get more than 500? Yeah. Interesting. All right.
But
Commissioners, any other questions for Marie or Nick?
Well done on the budget.
Right. Well, we do have a motion on the floor to recommend this budget proposal. So all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, that completes item 5.2. We move on to item 5.3. For this, I'd entertain a motion to approve the memo in our agenda packet regarding the execution of a contract with Jones Payne Group, and the execution of an FAA grant related to Phase 6 of the residential sound installation project. Do I hear a motion to that effect?
So moved.
It is moved by Robin. Is there a second?
Seconded.
Second. Thank you, Al. Discussion? Nick? Larry?
Yeah, Larry's gonna start it.
Yeah, as everybody knows where we're at, which I'll go through later anyway, but, we're currently out to bid with the first phase of the old DC money, which is 37 homes. We start under phase 5, we start construction in the next couple of weeks for several homes there. And we got previous grants, that allowed us to do program management, outreach, characterization, eligibility, and that's what set us up to be able to get this money from OLDCC. We were ready to accept that money and build or do improvements, okay? So what's happening here is we are asking for more money moving forward because we're utilizing all that money to do those homes for program management, outreach for 300 homes, characterization, eligibility for 200 homes, and get a design package ready for 50 homes that will ask for FAA grant approval next year for those homes, which will slide in well after we finished all the construction of the phase 5 and all the OLDCC homes. So this is soft cost to get us to keep moving forward and keep the program moving forward. So what we're asking here, we've applied for the grant. The grant was submitted. We've received only one question on the grant application. We submitted a response to that, and we don't expect any more. This is to sign a contract with Jones Payne to keep this program moving forward with us, and that's it. So, unless there's any questions.
I have one question.
Sure.
I know, I'm such annoying today. It's when I show up. So if you look off the end of 19, if you look off the end of runway 19 and you keep going just a little bit, they're building all these brand new houses on the hill, right in the flight path. Tell me they cannot ask for any noise stuff, right? And they're not, it's so ridiculous.
So our map is published, it's also published in the Federal Register.
Yeah.
If any new property is built inside of that noise contour, the way it is published today, it is not eligible for noise cancellation.
I mean, I would think they'd, be very, very familiar with the airport.
And one of
But
our, yeah, what they are, and in fact, we met with the developer. It's
Oh, good.
my brother's property, and in fact, we might have slowed down some of his efforts to build because they were building too high on the approach. One of our duties really as an airport is to make sure the jurisdictions that control land use development knows about federal aviation rules.
Oh, okay.
So when they pull a permit, regardless of what town, there's rules that say you can't build this high, there's noise programs.
Yeah. But does it trigger to the airport? Like you'd know who was building right away? No, okay.
Until they file an FAA.
Then
like,
right, then it triggers it. Okay, good.
So,
I mean, it should, because
but
otherwise,
who submitted the approval, then we do. Yeah, so we don't.
and then we have to block.
No, because we're not part of that process. When somebody files for the right, we can't determine, we don't have the knowledge or the determination to say this is too high or too low.
Right, but let's say that they file and the FAA goes, you're right on the end of the runway. And they say no, and they just,
They can't build it.
but what if they do?
Or sometimes.
Because you-
Say, hey,
Until it's too high.
that's why it's important that the land use regulations already have our height requirements in.
right, but the DRB already has recognized that they have to get 7460s for construction. So that's
FAA.
it's, yeah.
Yeah, so even though it's an FAA thing, we, as an airport, support it by saying, this is where our runway is, and this is how high we need for either coming in on approach or approach. Okay.
And I mean, we've gone as far as Jericho, I think even further on speaking to the land use jurisdictions.
Yeah,
Well, yeah,
everything, and you can fight that.
So otherwise, put you up around the approaches.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Pathways to the airport.
Yeah.
So we're able to.
Fascinating.
So I'll
Continue
have
that.
that report when we talk about the residential side, so she program, that's all I have. This keeps us moving.
Commissioners, anything else for Nick or Larry on this? I just have a pair of questions on this one. So the first is, these 2,400 properties that we're looking at, do we have a feel of the mix by town as to how that's spread out?
Oh, and the NEM we just did, each town broken down with the number of homes, Tim, I don't have that off the top of my head, but though they're all identified with the number of units per town, yes.
Okay, great.
It's all,
And that is published, Tim, so if anybody's listening or yourself, on btv7.com, that noise exposure map documentation is on there, and that does split it out by specific town. It also gives it even more detail, multi-family housing versus single-family housing and which community.
and we're really going into the new scheme now that we've, over the last 2 years, with the way we've moved the program with the closer homes, we're now making bigger steps into a new scheme. So.
Then the second question is, so these 2,400 units are all within the 65 DNL. How many are there more homes in the 65 DNL that we need to service after this? And if so, like, do we have a sense of how many other residential units there are to address in the 65 DNL?
This should cover all of them based on the studies that have been done at this time.
I would actually say the opposite of the 2,400 homes, not all of them are going to be eligible.
Right, they're not, because we have to do testing to make sure they already meet the interior noise level, Tim. Good point, Nick. So, yeah, they might not, that's part of the eligibility here, right? Characterization and eligibility of what they do to make sure these homes, I mean, if they're brick buildings, they might, they get good sound insulation, they might not qualify. So it just depends on how the building.
Okay, so maybe I'll rephrase my question then, because I realized I didn't say it right. So after these 2,400 units, are there other units in the 65 DNL that need to be examined for eligibility, or are these the last 2,400 units in the 65 DNL?
I mean, they've identified to the greatest extent possible that there's 24 homes that need to be characterized and looked at.
And that's it.
That's it,
That 2,400
Yeah.
number is what's in the 65.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Just wanted to get clarification on that. Right. Commissioners, any other questions before we call the question?
No.
All right, hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Great. We will move on to item 5.4. I'd be willing to entertain a motion to approve the memo in our agenda packet regarding the execution of an FAA grant for cargo apron construction and a related contract with related contracts with Hoyle Tanner and SD Ireland. Do I hear a motion to that effect?
So moved.
That's moved by Robin. Is there a second? All right, I will second that to move this along. And discussion. Nick or Larry?
I got it. So I think everybody's familiar with the current cargo apron we have where FedEx parks their plane. This project will expand that apron for common use, for potentially them or other users of that area. We have other cargo companies that come in with multiple planes that they might be able to come in with a bigger one maybe. So this will increase the size of that apron. And that's what this project is. This has been in our CIP for a while, so we're asking for authorization from City Council to sign a grant, which we've applied for. And we only received one question on this from the FAA, and actually they just missed it in our submittal, so I think we're in pretty good shape with the FAA. Hoyle Tanner, this only includes the construction administration and project representative costs, because a couple of years ago, we came before Airport Commission got approval for a design only grant for this project, and that's already covered and we're closing that project out. So this is only for the construction part of that project. And then, of course, SD Ireland, we bid the project, we received the bid from them and Engineers Construction, and SD Ireland was the low responsive bidder. responsible bid. So we want to sign contracts for them and we want to receive a grant to pay for those services. That's all I have unless there's any questions.
I miss our airport thing. We need our picture. Are you gonna put one in here? So good. Okay. Well, would we all? Yeah, so I guess the only question is, since the FedEx 757 is the biggest aircraft most of the time that we have at the airport, except when other military come in, so nothing can really be behind it, right? Because
This will be beside it.
and so it's gonna be beside it on the sort of
On this side,
north side, northish side,
yeah.
on the 119 side.
And
Okay.
it's size for 766.
And then will it have a new gate? Will it have its own thing, or is still everything's gonna be driven out of that one cargo airport gate where it opens?
The building?
No, where you know how so the trucks come in,
Oh,
right? And they all leave, it'll have the same one gate. Okay, gate 9. Okay, so some of the little guys like whoever could come back and park there, or I guess bigger UPS or something. Yeah, okay, cool.
And all small cargo operations will be operating off that new cargo.
So they won't be on that beacon ramp anymore. Oh. Well, that'll be helpful. Cause they buzz into that beacon ramp pretty fast.
Okay, this is a whole map, taxiway Kilo was on it, service for Ocean. So, yeah, we're relocating the existing vehicle service road. And of course, taxiway Kilo's there, but we get the vicinity is between where the apron ends and where the existing vehicle service road is right there. Yep. But they'll be right there, and the vehicle service road will be moved further to the left of that map. And of course, taxiway Kilo sits between that and runway 119.
Right, so everything kind of has to be shifted over a little bit.
Yeah, it's all part of the project.
That's cool. I think that'll be a huge part.
It's all about the Richard plane than the 75.
All right. Very unusual. It's funny that it's even on that picture. Thank you.
All right, commissioners, anything else for Larry on this item? All right, hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Hi,
Any opposed? Move on to item 6, construction update, also from Larry.
Okay, I'm gonna go through this quick. Partway when we just spoke about it, we submitted the grant application. The only news other than what I just said is most likely this project won't start till the spring of 27. However, depending on our current construction schedule for taxiway Charlie and how quick the grant comes in, who knows, it might be able to start this year, but we had made the contractor plan to start next year. Like we do every year with regard to our construction season. SRE building, I did note on here that we would have more details at this, we would have action items. We weren't ready to bring them this month. Well, I'm hoping hopes we can bring them next month, for that. Project Next, we received final approval from city council for that, to receive the final grant to complete this project that we're sitting in right now. So Nick signed it, we're just waiting for the city attorney to sign it, and then that'll help pay for some ongoing things we have with this current project. Taxiway Charlie, construction will start, at least layout next week, the rehab of Taxiway Charlie.
Wait, rehab and tax. All of Jackie Charlie?
Yeah,
Oh,
it'll be done
Is it
at
gonna
the
close?
night to minimize the impact.
oh. All right, so we gotta go around and go up there. Oh, right. Would be the only option, right? Thanks for that.
And I think that's about it for construction update. I mean, Nick touched on some on the financial report and we just talked about the residential sound isolation program and Carter Apron and Project Next, so I think that's all I have.
All right. Commissioners, any questions for Larry?
No, thank you.
Right, we'll move on to item 7, the residential sound installation program. Larry, one more time, keep on rolling.
Yeah, okay, the only updates are, we're starting, we've got some minor things, some screen doors and stuff to finish from phase 4 from last year. We're starting phase 5 construction in the next couple of weeks. Phase 6, we just, phase 6 was really, what's phase 6? What we just talked about. Okay, phase 6 is what we just spoke about with regard to the moving the program forward. The OLBC, bids for the first round of those homes, 37 of them are due next week. And the contractor will start by July on those homes. Later in the year, we will bid the second package depending on how much funding we have available after the bid comes in. Initially, we estimated it at 58 homes. We're hoping for more. That's all I got right now. I'm actually, no, there's nothing. I'm feeling the best I felt since we started this program 5 years ago with the team we have in place right now, with the consultant team, the mix, and also the addition of staff for my help here. All that has made this much easier, and we've got things very well organized and doing great now. We move forward really well. It's taken 5 years, bro.
You still already 10 years.
Thanks for saying that, Larry. I think it's always really important when you have folks in leadership.
Yeah.
Who, like, it was lovely to see you and Jeff and Nick and everyone like a day like on the podium on the opening day. But I think it's always really important that people acknowledge that like it's not just folks in leadership who get the work done. And so I just want to commend you and obviously others just for really like acknowledging that like you are not the sole person who does this work, and that
I'm
is,
definitely training to work.
yeah. Well, it's something, as someone who has, been in those positions in other spaces. I just think it's always so important that like, not to quote the cliche of like, there's no I in team, but particularly I think, especially when you're a man in power and there are women on your team and then maybe below you. I just really appreciate you sharing the credit stuff. Thank you.
Yeah, there's a lot of credit to do there. It's awesome. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Commissioners, anything else on this topic? All right, we'll move on to item 7.2, which is noise comments from Jesse.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. The report was published, I don't have any additional comments. Probably what's in there, we only got one more comment in February and one in March. Other than that, it brings us to 835 comments. Before that was 833, so not getting too many.
But the 35 were on. They weren't here for almost 2 months, so it does reduce the sound considerably. When we've had comments of the 800 that we have, since we've done such a good job, like kind of with the residential homes and that kind of thing, has there been an emphasis on people that are just like outside, like schoolyards? People that work outside are saying, hey, yeah, I'm fine when I'm in my house, but as soon as I go outside, I'm really suffering, or the kids are suffering, or whatever. I don't know. I haven't read the reports.
Yeah, it really depends. They're all different. Some people just say where they're living and what the noise was.
Yeah.
And the system, anytime someone puts it in a comment, it links it to an active sound that it's tracking.
Oh.
So they don't have to comment any content. Some people do.
Mm-hmm.
One of the stats in the data is that only about 66% of the commenters only comment one time, but the top 5 commenters provided almost 600 of those comments. So this is
Well done.
for
Those 5
the raw data,
Diligent.
not. Yeah, this report is limited to just the raw data.
I got you.
Being read how, just however one would take it. Some of them do have content, and yeah, some of them are more specific than others. And they provide their address where they are. So I think it's on slide, I don't have it up, but Side 4, it says specifically how many people from each town. Things like that, and the raw data that I look at, it doesn't give me a map for that specific person, but it says their exact address. Where
wow.
they live.
That's impressive. Even if they didn't put it in, it shows it.
I believe they
Have to put it in because for
and that's
the whole,
also-
right? Okay.
Yes, and that's also accessible on TV sound. That's earlier, that's how you access this site. On the site, there's also information where people can contact her directly if they have comments as well, so it's not actually the direct that. Yeah, I keep track of our general help desk feedback, and I've never seen the news comment to my knowledge in there, so this is the one place that people are giving us that feedback. Yeah, any other questions about the noise report, noise comments?
Anything else for Jesse? All right, I think we're done. We can move on to item 8, which is the director's report.
All right, thank you. As I usually do, I like to start with some pictures of the overall project next. Of course, our new building is up and operational. We're still only live on gates 1 and 2 as the normal is removed. It's pretty much a shell out there. All the glass is out. Everything is gone. These are some of the images from our old office space and prepping for this to be utilized by passengers. So they're cruising. The second that we open this, I think we are all very surprised, including Dave, on how fast our contractor Apron is moving. And working with our various teams to address each thing, because now we're not building a new building, we're renovating a 1950s building, and it's messy. So it takes a little bit of effort. The old concourse, like I said, is weeks and weeks away from being fully removed and rehabilitating the concrete underneath. So that we can open up gates 3 and 4 by hopefully the end of the summer. But it's very exciting to see it all come together. Speaking of new space, we were able to utilize this picture left actually is just right outside these doors right here. This new space for partners. So we had the Champlain Regional Chamber of Commerce and the Hello Burlington board have a joint meeting up here. This is the first time we were able to utilize this public space outside. We had about 40 or 50 people utilizing this space. I think it was the following evening, I can't remember. We also celebrated with the Lake Champlain Regional Chamber of Commerce on their annual gala, they called it, where I was able to present the emerging leader of the year to Michelle Harity of UVM with Mayor Mulvaney Stanek, as well as Kathy Davis and Alex. Kathy is the president of the LCR's Lake Champlain Chamber, and Alex is the board chair, which was really fun. It was a great time. Next is just a couple of upcoming things that I have. Dave can actually talk about his team.
Sure, yeah. We hired a new ops specialist. We brought that to the airport commission, I think in December last year. Went through, posted it, and we found a specialist named Andrew Eaton, comes from Seattle, Washington. We offered him the job, and in 3 weeks, he made a move all the way from Washington to Burlington. He got a place to stay. He was here for 3 weeks, no questions asked. You know, that's part of it. They showed the good that he has to do the job. So he's here. He's been here for about 2 weeks. Excellent addition to our team.
And this is now the largest amount of operations specialists and 4-person being manager and led by Dave. the largest team of our 24/7 operations team that we've ever had at the airport.
Very busy, kind of cash off a lot of these kind of here, so.
We have a couple of exciting events coming up, May 1st, which we know is not exactly Green Up Day, but it's a Friday, so our entire team is here. This is now, I think, our 4th year in a row that we've done this. Where the entire airport team, we collaborate with Heritage. Beta's gonna help us this year, and we get 5-gallon buckets and pick up trash pickers, whatever they're called, and we walk pretty much our 900 acres. And we just disperse, they have a lot of team out on the airfield. I always like to go from the terminal and walking all the way to the Winooski River. And then we have another team going southbound, Heritage doing this on the south end, and we green up, which is exhausting, but a lot of fun. And it's a really cool team building exercise as well. Dave and the team are getting ready for what we call full scale exercises. It's a required emergency operations exercise. This is happening in September of this year. So lots of effort on the operations team right now to coordinate and test our emergency operations, knowledge and process.
This one they tell us, right? This one we know what's gonna happen. Right? It's not like the one where they,
teams will know.
everybody knows,
Nobody will know the specifics besides the flying.
right, because they're not gonna tell us what the emergency is.
Correct. Yeah, and that's the purpose is, obviously they'll know it's an
See how you
exercise, but how do you respond? How can we improve our operations and our response? And we have a very serious, not a first response from a medical standpoint or firefighting standpoint, but we're first responders out there, and the team is the first one that's going to be at the end of the runway with the fire department, and we have very specific protocols to go through. It's a lot of effort. We are required to do these every 36 calendar months, every 3 years by the FAA. We hire a team to help not just organize, but also test our systems out. We'll invite the commission to, if you want to take a peek at what's out
Do
there.
we get to be victims?
We would love, we would love.
It is so much fun.
Yeah, we do, yeah, it is. I mean, the morbid answer to that is, yeah, we need to test the worst case scenario. And to do that, it's nice to have actors out there to simulate injuries.
And we have to close the river for a little bit, right?
Yeah, one more time.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. The team is about to just come back from, in a couple days, from Buffalo, New York. I think we talked to you about this last meeting. We sent ops specialists, maintenance, 2 ops specialists, maintenance. Headed back out in Buffalo, and all the airports joined up out there for a conference called the Snow Symposium, to not just learn about equipment, but also snow operations. They must do it for a purpose if they go.
I was just thinking that.
Tell all the stories and say, thank goodness we have a little reprieve from snow right now. And then Jumpstart Conference, Jeff and I are going to be on the road to Chicago. This is a pretty intense conversation where we're going to be meeting with 10 airlines over a 2-day period of time. And it is fast, it's quick, it is lots of data. We're meeting with incumbent airlines as well as brand new airlines to encourage growth at ABTV. But there's a lot of work for that as well, a lot of a significant amount of data collection to support additional growth. And then as far as our statistics go, you can see our number of departures is relatively steady and cyclical as you look at the dashed blue line across the rest of the year. It looks very similar, although a little bit of an increase over 25 and 24, with number of departures. This is airline departures from WBTV. Certainly not as many as 2008, which we get over 15,000 departures from the airlines. But on the next side, you can see that our number of scheduled seats on even less departures is slowly creeping up to that, just over 1 million that we saw in 2008. So 2026 projected for just shy of 940,000 passengers. Sorry, 940,000 seats. Doesn't mean those are filled. Average number of seats on a plane continues to rise, which means we're getting larger aircraft, less operations, and our load factors or our number of occupied seats it's about industry average still. It's not as high as 2023, which our average was 86%. Now we're just shy of 81% of number of filled seats for calendar year 2025. And then finally, you saw it in the budget presentation as well, but the passenger statistics is still looking extremely healthy. We ended last calendar year at 718,000 passengers. These are people in planes in those seats, and we're projecting just over 753,000 total passengers for the year. We do have a slow start this year. You can see the first 3 months. Certainly January and February were not as high as 2025, higher than 24, and about on par, about on par, except for March a little bit with 2019. But the rest of the year, the projections seriously start climbing, especially into the fall. So as we continue to look at those actual numbers, which are not underlined, everything that is underlined is all American.
Can that get affected by our heavy snow winter when we had a lot of cancellations?
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
so that's it, so we had,
And snow, I think both government shutdowns had pretty big.
right, we had huge passenger refugees around the country that couldn't get here, even though we could clear the runway. They're not gonna come in.
I think the
They
biggest
just-
thing was the government shutdown. So in October, when it was shut down, people were hesitant to book for their December trips.
Right.
So that's why December and January were a little bit lower. Then again, hopefully we don't see it again in a few months after the last shutdown, whatever it was, 5 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, 3, I can't remember when it ended. And there's still that residual conversation of funding for the Department of Homeland Security as well. So we're tracking that as best as we can. Those are the items in the bucket of things that we can't control directly, but we're of course watching it as it relates to our passenger numbers on each particular month.
Can you go back to the last slide real quick? Do we not do 2020 and 2021 because it's such an anomaly with
Yeah.
COVID? We just leave it out because it doesn't,
It's not
real data.
It's not relevant. It's not to the trends. Yeah. Although interesting enough, even if you throw in 2020 is really low, but 21, 22, you still see the seasonal nature of our graphs in there as well.
And we don't have 23 on the bottom on the average receipts.
So usually I do a 2 or 3 year rolling average, but I like to include 2019, which is the projection was right before COVID. We were on track to hit some pretty big numbers. 2008 was our highest year.
Right.
So those are two really good comparables. But the last 3 years are, I like to show those. They're the most relevant. But of course, we have them. And that's what I have for you this month. Thank you very much.
Commissioners, anything else for Nick? Nope, move on to item 9, which is commissioner items. Nothing came in advance, but are there any items that commissioners wish to discuss at this time?
My only question was, we have this gigantic aviation day happening at Montpelier on Thursday. Is anybody from Burlington coming?
Yeah, we're doing all the meetings and had some conversations with Evan and Secretary Flynn and things like that. It definitely seems more in tune with advocacy for state airports. And based on our previous conversation with tonight,
Yeah.
we just don't want to, we don't want to do better.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going to be done now. Yeah.
Commissioners, any other items?
No.
All right, hearing none, we'll move on to 10. Item 10, which is follow-up items. So I do see that we have on the agenda a conversation about AI. I know that Andrew was interested in that. I think if I remember correctly, he was the person who asked for this. Unfortunately, he did have to drop for a conflict. So, commissioners, if you're amenable, I'd like to postpone this, just to table this discussion until a future meeting. Are commissioners okay with that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Unless Nick, sorry, I should have said, Nick, if there's something that you want to say, I don't want to just make you wait. Is there anything you want to specifically talk about today that you plan for, or would you prefer to wait until Andrew is present?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if I think, yeah, I'd love to wait.
Okay, then we will do that. So then also in follow-up items, commissioners who are here today, is there anything you've heard today that you would like a follow-up on at a future commission meeting?
I guess all I would say is I'd love an update when it's appropriate to sort of continue to understand the TSA activity at the airport. I mean, my understanding is that we lucked out. We have some really good, or the TSA and this area of the world have really good employees. So most of them showed up for work, but that seems to be a continuing issue. Maybe I'm wrong. So if there's anything we should know about that, I would love an update.
Yeah, absolutely. I can give a short one right now, and that might be a nice one actually to keep on a rolling item as well, especially as appropriations conversations continue to happen down in Washington. Yes, I think you're spot on, Alan. One, we have an incredible TSA team that, despite a second really hard time period for the officers down at the TSA checkpoint, not receiving paychecks, they did still show up to work. We did not have really any systemic issues of delays. We did have this last time around, we did have a couple of pretty long warning times. In fact, I think I received 3 alerts, which were about 45-minute wait times at the 6 o'clock hour, 6 a.m. hour. But they showed up, and what's really incredible is, as I think we reported last month, the community showed up too. We received so many donations, so many gift cards, gas cards, so that TSA officers could make it to work. There's a really positive support with that. They are being paid right now. There is no donations being accepted any longer, which is a federal. However, there's still some appropriations conversations for funding DHS that is still ongoing. In fact, just this afternoon, there's an all airport director phone call that Airport Council International hosts once a week to kind of follow that story and what the federal legislators are what's being discussed and but it's again a really tough conversation. We don't see any projections of delays, but that can change so fast in that particular day.
Thank you.
Oh, does that answer your question, or do you want this to be a follow-up item for a future meeting as well?
I guess just to follow up, if there's something to report, like if they don't get funded again, to know how it's happening or what's happening at BTC or BTC, BTV.
I think the one follow-up item that I have is during the budget conversation, we got into a really engrossing conversation about the fuel tax. And I think maybe I feel like at the state level, like we got a pretty good explanation, but I'm still a little unclear as to like the South Burlington component and where those dollars are going, if they're going to an aviation source, and if so, what is it, or are they not going to an aviation source at all? So, and I know we only have the 4 minimum commissioners here, but maybe just briefly touching base again at a future meeting about the state level, but then more details on South Burlington would be appreciated.
Yeah.
Tim, I'm happy to follow up with the council and the city manager to understand that, because I don't, all the budgets I passed, I don't know where that money goes.
If I could request, I'd love to continue the conversations with the city manager and some of the logistics around that prior to it
Okay.
being grown from there, but I can absolutely put that into next month's meeting, and hopefully by then too, I'll have some updates for you on specifically the taxes associated with the South Burlington portion. Today, I can share with you that right now, there's been no funding that has come back to the airport from the local option tax with South Burlington. However, strong conversations on long-term use of those funds and how to do this.
Enough.
Thank you, Nick. Commissioners, last call for follow-up items. Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Three moves. I don't even know who moved first. But I'll second it since I don't know who went first. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Have a beautiful evening.